Hello and welcome to Breaking Down Bad Books, a podcast analysing trashy bestsellers from a literary perspective. And today we're looking at chapter 17 of 50 Shades of Grey. This episode of Breaking Down Bad Books is brought to you by Vitable. I'm a big fan of taking vitamins and supplements, and I'm loving my personalised routine from Vitable. Vitable's personalised quiz helped me see what vitamins and supplements work best for me. For example, it suggested I take pre- and probiotics to help with my digestion and bloating. Who knew? Visit breakingdownbadbooks.com/promotions for the link to take Vitable's quiz and for current offer codes to get you a sweet, sweet discount. Now back to 50 Shades. So where we left off, Christian spanked Anna. She didn't like it, but she sort of did, but she sort of didn't like that she sort of liked it. And she did some stroppy emailing with Christian, and then he just rocked up, and Kate was like, "You're not coming in," and then he came in. And then he slept with her, because she asked him to. And so we start pretty much straight away, but she's in a dream. It's a dream sequence. And don't we love a dream sequence, except this one's not as fun as when she went down on the riding crop. She's just dreaming some bullshit about being caught in a breeze, and there's a candle flame that's too hot, and she's struggling to resist it, but she's drawn to how bright it is, and then she's flying too close to the sun, and she's dazzled by the light, and then she's melting, and she's so warm, the heat is overpowering, and then she wakes up. And it's clearly just a mix of the moth to a flame, Icarus flying too close to the sun metaphor. She's been banging that one on for a while now. And I think she thinks we're not going to realise what she's talking about, but yep, we got it. We got it. And she opens her eyes and she's draped in Christian grey. She says, "He's wrapped around me like a victory flag." She's so dumb. But he's asleep with his head on her chest and his legs thrown over her. So, I mean, that's cute. That's cute, but no, it's not that cute because he's suffocating her with his body heat. And then she realises that because he's asleep, she can touch him. So being the creeper that she is, she takes a chance and she starts running the tips of her fingers down his back. And then he wakes up, of course. And she hears a distressed groan. So he clearly doesn't like to be touched, so stop it. So then he wakes up and then he's like, "Oh, Jesus, even in my sleep, I'm drawn to you." And that's when she realises that he's got a huge boner. Good morning indeed. And she says, "You're very hot." And he says, "You're not so bad yourself." And she flushes. And she's like, "That's not what I meant." But she says she feels 7 shades of scarlet from his heat. Now we're 7 shades of something instead of 50 shades. She's already dropped the 50 Shades reference. Now to bring it back down to 7 just feels like an anticlimax. And he asks if she slept well, and she nods, and she realises that she did sleep very well. And I was like, mate, you just started the chapter with a nightmare. Oh, you flying too close to the sun and then feeling hot and then falling to earth? That's not a nightmare? No, she slept well. She slept well. But then they realise that it's 7:30 and Christian's like, "Shit, I've overslept." And so he's all flustered and he gets out of bed and pulls his pants up, etc. He said he has to be in Portland at 8. Not knowing where the fuck she is. I don't know if it's easy to get to Portland in half an hour, but here's hoping Taylor's been parked out the front all night and's ready to drop him home. So he gets dressed and then he looks at her and he says, "Sunday." And the word is pregnant with an unspoken promise, which is ironic because on Sunday she's seeing his doctor to get contraception. And her body clenches in anticipation. So then he racks off, and she's like, "Oh my, Christian Grey spent the night with me and I feel rested. And there was no sex, only cuddling." It's like, oh, babe, are you forgetting when he fucked you at 9:40 p.m? You've given us the timestamps in previous chapters. You banged, then he went away, came back, and then you slept. But you still banged yesterday. So then she starts getting ready, and then she glances at the mean machine, and it's only 7:52 a.m. So she got ready in 22 minutes. Good for her. She had breakfast and showered and got dressed all in 22 minutes. What a gun. And then we're reading an email that she sends to Christian dated at 8:05. So she whipped up an email in 13 minutes, which is just about the time it took her to get ready. And the subject is assault and battery, the after effects. And I think she's being a bit dramatic. I mean, he spanked her. I guess that's maybe technically assault and battery, but there was consent. I don't know, I'm not a lawyer. And she says, Dear Mr. Gray, you wanted to know why I felt confused after you... which euphemism should we apply? Spanked, punished, beat, assaulted me? And I was like, none of them are euphemisms. Those are just descriptive words. And she's like, well, I felt demeaned, debased and abused. But you're right, I was aroused. She's like, I was happy that you were happy and relieved that it wasn't as painful as I thought. But I felt guilty feeling that way. It doesn't sit with me and I'm confused as a result. I hope the world of mergers and acquisitions is as stimulating as ever and that you weren't too late. She thinks she's so fucking funny by referring to anything work-related as mergers and acquisitions. Like, is that even what Christian does? I don't know. Then he's responded at 8:24. And then he says, yep, let's just call it spanking. Well, yeah, great. Glad we clarified that. And he pretty much just says, look, feel how you feel, but don't feel how you think you should feel. There's nothing wrong with feeling aroused. You're just feeling guilty because you think you shouldn't feel that way and that you shouldn't enjoy it. He says you need to free your mind and listen to your body. And then she responds at 8:26. So just 2 minutes later, she's quick on that mean machine. She can fire off an email like no man's business. And she changes the subject line to consenting adults, ! And she says, aren't you in a meeting? And she says, if I'd listened to my body, I'd be in Alaska by now. Which I guess is hilarious because she would flee to Alaska. And he responds with a different subject title, you didn't call the cops. And he says, I'm in a meeting discussing the futures market if you're really interested. What the fuck's the futures market? Is that a marketplace where you buy shit for the future? I don't know. I assume it's something to do with stocks. I don't know. I don't care. And he sort of pulls her up and he's like, hey, for the record, you knew what I was about to do. You didn't ask me at any time to stop. You didn't use either safe word, like verbal or non-verbal. You are an adult, you have choices, and quite frankly, I'm looking forward to next time I have to spank you. And he's like, oh, and also, Alaska's no good, I would find you, I track your cell phone, remember? So on one hand, he's saying, hey, look, you have all this choice in the world. You can make choices, you have free will. Next minute, don't run or else I'll come and find you. There's no place that you can hide that I won't find you because I track your phone. So kind of a mixed message. So she responds, stalker is the subject line. And she says, have you sought therapy for your stalker tendencies? And you just know she's typed that up and she's like, I'm killing it. Her inner goddess is probably giving her a high five over her half-moon spectacles or whatever the fuck she wears. And he responds, subject line, stalker, me, and mate, just focus on your fucking meeting. The futures market isn't going to market itself. And he just clarifies and he's like, yeah, I actually pay Dr. Flynn a small fortune in regard to my stalker tendencies. Go to work. And because she's a terrible submissive, she just ignores that. And she sends another email titled Expensive Charlatans. And she says, may I suggest you seek a second opinion? I'm not sure Dr. Flynn is very effective. Oh, and it's still going. And he says second opinions. And he says, not that it's any of your business, but Dr. Flynn is the second opinion. You will have to speed in your new car to get to work in time, and that's against the rules. Go to work, in all caps. And then she responds, in all caps in the subject line, shouty capitals. As the object of your stalker tendencies, I think it is my business. I haven't signed yet, so rules schmools, and I don't start until 9:30. Then why was she up and rushing through the shower and breakfast at 8 o'clock in the morning? And he says, schmools, not sure where that appears in Webster's dictionary. This flirting is just, ugh. And she says, it's between control freak and stalker. And, well, no, that's categorically impossible. There's no way that schmools comes after C and is just before ST. I mean, there's a lot of words in between in Webster's, I imagine. And she's like, descriptive linguistics is a hard limit for me. And will you stop bothering me now? I'd like to go to work in my new car. Bitch, you can just not respond. Just don't respond. And then he sends another email saying, my palm is twitching, drive safely, Miss Steele. So she's over the whole not enjoying the spanking thing, clearly, because she's loving the banter about the spanking. So she drives to work and she notices that the new car has power steering, and she's used to not having power steering with Wanda, her Beetle. So she's like, well, there goes my daily workout, because that was her workout, driving her car. And it's like, Anna, that's not exercise. You're literally driving. That's what exercise isn't. And then while she's driving, she tries to think back about the emails, and she's like, oh, he's a patronizing son of a bitch sometimes. And then she feels bad because she thinks of Grace. And I was like, why is she thinking of Grace? And then I'm like, oh, she thinks that she just called Grace a bitch by calling him a son of a bitch. Regardless of the fact that it's not his birth mother, she used the expression son of a bitch and then felt guilty because it inferred that Grace was a bitch. Like, this is an adult woman. And then she thinks how she just wants Christian, not all his baggage. And right now he has a 747 holds worth of baggage. Nothing's ever easy in this book. Nothing's ever easy. If she can cram a dumb metaphor in, she will. So she goes to Clayton's. It's her last day. It's busy. But at lunch, a motorcycle courier comes up. And she realizes Christian sent her something else. And it's a small package, and inside of it is a BlackBerry. As she opens it, there's an email from Christian saying, BlackBerry on loan. And it says, to Anastasia, I need to be able to contact you at all times. I figured you needed a BlackBerry. Now, she has a phone. She has a mobile phone that is portable. She has a laptop at home. Does her phone not have email? I guess she's on an old flip phone or something. She's running a flippy. But now she's got a BlackBerry as well. Fucking hell. So she sends off another email, subject line, consumerism gone mad. She says, I think you need to call Dr. Flynn right now. Your stalker tendencies are running wild. I'm at work, I'll email you when I get home. Thanks for another gadget, blah, blah, blah. How is it already set up with all of her details? Last time he sent a technician to set her up to the cloud or whatever, but this one, I guess it's just pre-set up. He knows the passwords. And if I was her, and I was already aware that he was sort of tracking my phone, I'd be like, there's definitely a tracker in this BlackBerry, right? Like, it would be bugging her, for sure. So then he sends an email with the subject line, sagacity from one so young. I had to Google what that word meant. And he says, fair point, well made, as ever still. No. I'm not going to indulge in any more fucking fair points well made. We're skipping over this. So she puts the BlackBerry in her back pocket, hating it already. She's like, emailing Christian is addictive, but I'm supposed to be working. And then it buzzes against her behind, and she thinks, how apt. And then at the end of the shift, Mr. and Mrs. Clayton gather everyone around, they do a speech, and then they give her a check for $300, which is pretty generous, right? Like, that's nice. Was she that good of a worker? I don't think so. And then suddenly everything from the past week or two just starts welling up in her, and she amazingly holds herself together. And as in not crying. And I was like, well, bitch, you shed so many tears last night, there's nothing left in you. When she gets home, Kate's also pulling up and she sees her car and she's like, what's that? And she says, it's a car. And she says, I quip. So she thinks she's being funny. And Catherine Kavanagh says, generous over-the-top bastard, isn't he? And she's like, yeah, no wonder you're so overwhelmed. I did note that he stayed. And it's just like, yeah. And Kate's like, oh, well, let's finish packing then. Oh, and then there's another fucking email from Christian. It's just saying, I'll see you on Sunday. The doctor will see you at 1:30. We'll meet at my house, blah, blah, blah. And she's annoyed at how practical the email was. She says it's like an email to an employee, and she rolls her eyes at it defiantly. You can't win with her, honestly. And then Taylor comes to pick up the Beetle. So she chats to him for a little bit. She's like, how long have you worked for Mr. Grey? And he says 4 years. And she has this overwhelming urge to bombard him with questions. And she's like, but he's probably signed an NDA. So she doesn't ask any questions. He just says, he's a good man, Miss Steele. And then he smiles slightly. And then he drives off with a car. What a great scene. Pivotal. Then she says, apartment, Beetle, Clayton's. It's all changed now. It's all change now. Did she mean changed? It's all changed now. Like, what it's all change. It's all changing? Everything's changing? Is that what she's trying to say? Use your fucking words properly. What are you saying here? Then after they finish packing, Jose comes over and they get Chinese takeout. And he brings several bottles of beer. And so they watch crap TV, drink beer, and as the evening wears on, they're loudly reminiscing as the beer takes effect. So she's a bloody drinker. I mean, every chapter she's knocking back an alcoholic bevy. E.L. James just forgot that she said she never drank. She just forgot. And she says that the atmosphere between Jose and her has returned to normal. The attempted kiss has been swept under the rug. And of course, she can't just leave it at that. So she says, it's been swept under the rug that my inner goddess is lying on, eating grapes and tapping her fingers, waiting not so patiently for Sunday. And then Elliot comes in and he and Kate just make out a bit. And she's like, get a room. And she's appalled at their lack of modesty. Appalled, she says. And I'm like, you got spanked last night 18 times. You kept count. So she says to Jose, hey, let's go walk down to the bar. And she walks out and she rolls her eyes at Kate. And she thinks, ha, exclamation mark. I can still roll my eyes in my own time. Like she's really, really fixed on this don't roll your eyes business. And so then they stroll down to the bar and she puts her arm through Jose's and she thinks, God, he's so uncomplicated. I hadn't really appreciated that before. Is he that uncomplicated? I mean, he tried to kiss you against your will a couple of chapters ago, but okay, it's under the rug and her inner goddess is sitting on top of it. So that's where we're at. And he says, you'll still come to the opening of my show, right? And she says, of course, when is it? And he says, June 9th. And she panics and she's like, what day is that? And he says it's a Thursday. And she just says, oh yeah, I should be able to make that. So you can tell that she's panicking, thinking, oh no, I hope it's not on a weekend. Because remember, on a weekend, she's Christian's property. So then they get back from the bar and Kate and Elliot are nowhere to be seen, but boy, can they be heard. And she thinks, holy shit, I hope I'm not that loud. And I mean, yeah, every time she's had sex, she's telling us that she's moaning loudly. So yeah, you probably are that loud. So then she checks the mean machine. Yeah, she's still calling it the mean machine. And then there's an email from Christian saying, where are you? And he's being super passive aggressive. He must have copied and pasted from her previous email and now he's stuck it in and he's put quote marks around it and italicized it. And it says, I am at work. I will email you when I get home. And then he's like, are you still at work? Or have you packed your phone, your BlackBerry and your MacBook? And says, call me. And she's like, crap. And she thinks about Jose. And she's like, uh-oh. Because she knows if Christian finds out about Jose, it'll mean trouble. So she already wants to, keep things from her partner. It's very healthy. And there's 5 missed calls and a voice message on her phone. And she listens to the message and, it's Christian. Well, no fucking duh. And he's pretty much saying, if you say you're going to contact me when you finish work, then you better have the decency to do so. Otherwise, I'm going to worry. And I don't tolerate that. Call me. So, surprise, surprise, he's a controlling asshole. And she thinks, double crap. Will he ever give me a break? And she says, he is suffocating me. With a deep dread uncurling in my stomach, I scroll down to his number and press dial. These are all red flags. Also, where are you scrolling to? He just called you. Press a button. What's this scrolling about? And she says he'd probably like to beat 7 shades of shit out of me. And this is the second time in this chapter we've gotten 7 shades of something. Did Elle forget that it's 50 Shades of Grey that a book's called? But she's just 7 shades of everything. But then when she gets him on the phone, he's really placid. He's like, I was worried about you. And then he's like, did you have a pleasant evening? And she's just like, yeah, we got Chinese takeout. And she does mention Jose's name. But Christian doesn't blow up about it. So that's a bloody positive. And he just says that he went to a fundraising dinner and it was really dull. And she notes that he sounds so sad and resigned. And then she's picturing him playing the piano in his living room and she thinks, about how sad he must be. What's this narrative? I'm not going to feel sorry for a hot billionaire who can fly a helicopter and has all these different properties, and a manservant that just runs around buying his girlfriend underwear. I'm not feeling sorry for him, EL. And she says, I wish you were here. And he says, do you? And she thinks, holy mackerel, that doesn't sound like him. And then her scalp prickles with dawning apprehension. Holy mackerel, that's a new one. Add that to the list. So again, they say, see you Sunday. And she says, good night, sir. And that must turn him on because he has a sharp intake of breath. And then she says, you hang up. And then finally, she senses his smile. So now she's sensing fucking smiles over the phone. She's not hearing a smile even this time, because sometimes she's like, oh, I heard him smile through the way he says words, which I think is bullshit, but I'll allow it. I'll allow it with an asterisk above it. But no, this sensing his smile. No, she's not that fucking creepy little kid from The Sixth Sense sensing smiles all the time. Nuh-uh. Nope. And he says, no, you hang up. And she says, and I know he's grinning. So she's got ESP. She's got ESP. She is just clairvoyant. She's Madame Trelawney. She just can sense when he's smiling, and she knows it. She knows it deep down. And they do some you hang up, no you hang up bloody bullshit that I'm not going to indulge. And then eventually she hangs up, mercifully. And then we get a page break jump in time, and we're in their new apartment, and Elliot is just replugging the TV into the satellite system. Kate and her flop onto the couch, giggling. Don't know what they're laughing about, but they're giggling. And then Elliot's like, I'd love to stay, but my sister is back from Paris. It's a compulsory family dinner tonight. Hey, the sister from Paris, she's getting another mention. So Elliot racks off, but not before Anna can be all awkward at their PDA. She hates PDA. She's always cringing. She says it's icky. She's rolling her eyes at the pair of them. She's very prudish. Again, for someone that's just had 13 sex sessions in the past 8 days, she's very prudish. She even says how they can barely keep their hands off each other, and it's embarrassing, but she's also pea green with envy. You know what no one has ever needed? A definition of what shade of green it is when someone says they're green with envy. No one needs to know you're pea green. Just saying green with envy's enough. And then later that night, they're in the apartment, they're eating pizza surrounded by all the boxes. And she says, Kate's dad has done us proud. The apartment is not large, but it's big enough. 3 bedrooms and a large living space that look out onto Pike Place Market itself in the middle of the city. Be fucking grateful. That sounds huge. I'm sitting here in a 1-bedroom. I would kill for 2 more bedrooms. What are they doing with their 3rd bedroom? And a large living space in the heart of the city? People would kill for that. And then a delivery man comes at 8. Like, she loves telling us what time things happen. Like, no one really cares. No one cares. And so the delivery kid has a bottle of champagne with a helicopter-shaped balloon on it, which is kind of cute. And there's a note from Christian saying, ladies, good luck in your new home, Christian Grey. And Kate's like, ugh, why can't he just write from Christian? And what's with the weird helicopter balloon? And so she reveals that it's Charlie Tango. Because, now that she's picked up that radio lingo, she's going to use it. She's like, Charlie Tango, Christian flew me to Seattle in his helicopter. And Kate's like, what? Why did you never bring this up? Which is a great point. Why has Anna been so withholding? Surely the helicopter aspect wasn't included in the NDA. And she says, of course the obscenely rich bastard has a helicopter. Why didn't you tell me? And you know what, Kate, you're dating his brother. I'm sure his brother's also pretty rich. He might not be billionaire level like Christian, but it seems like that family's pretty wealthy. And then she picks up on something that should be concerning. She's like, did you give him our address? And she says, no, but stalking is one of his specialties. They just leave it at that. I mean, Kate does say, somehow I'm not surprised. He worries me, Anna. At least the champagne's good, and it's cold. So yeah, she's fine with stalking as long as she can get some chilled champagne out of it. And then, I swear to fucking God. I swear to God, I almost threw my book across the room when I read this. She says it's a Bollinger Grand Année Rosé, 1999, an excellent vintage. And she grins at Kate, and they clink teacups. Teacups. Now, are you fucking shitting me? You're in your new apartment, you're unpacking your boxes, but you haven't unpacked the champagne glasses, but you've unpacked the teacups. I mean, if you're already unpacking the box of kitchen supplies, take the fucking other glasses out. If you're taking the teacups out, you're right there. Surely they're right there. So she wakes up the next morning and her inner goddess is hopping from foot to foot, just super excited that today's the day she gets to see Christian. Like, she saw him the other day. But no, she's got butterflies in her belly, just as per usual. And then she hears the ping of incoming mail from the mean machine. The mean machine. And it's Christian just sending through what like the access code is for the elevator. He's saying park in bay number 5, blah, blah, blah. And she responds being like, yes, understood, thank you for the champagne and the blow up Charlie Tango, which is now tied to my bed. And he responds 3 minutes later. And he says, you're welcome, lucky Charlie Tango, because it's tied to her bed. Hilarious. Then the next revelation we get is that she can drive the Audi in high heels! ! And at 12:55 p.m. precisely, she pulls into the garage of his building. 12:55 precisely. Who needs to know this, EL? All the desperate housewives reading this are reading it to get off. They're not reading it to fucking get a timetable schedule happening. And then in the mirrors of the elevator, she's checking herself out. And her inner goddess has pom-poms in her hand and she's like, you go, girl. Like, if I didn't know already that this was Twilight fan fiction, I would have assumed EL wrote this in the 90s and then got it out of her drawer, blew the dust off the top of it, and then submitted it to a publishing house because, my gosh, it's so 90s. And then as she gets out of the elevator, Taylor's there greeting her because Taylor never gets a fucking day off. And so he leads her to Christian, who's in the living room. He's wearing a white linen shirt. He's handsome. She takes a lot longer than that to describe how handsome he is, but I'll just summarize it and say he's handsome. We don't need the 10-line paragraph explaining how handsome he is. And he gives her a kiss and then he's like, I want to show you something. And he shows her page 8 of the Seattle Times and there's a photograph of the two of them together at the grad. And she thinks, holy crap, I'm in the paper. And the caption says, Christian Grey and friend. And friend. So how does that feel that the Seattle Times has friend-zoned you? I mean, that's rough. The journo at the Seattle Times saw that and thought, that's got to be a friend. That's not his girlfriend. Friend-zoned by a newspaper. Oof. And then he asks her the 3 words I hate the most in this book, and that's, have you eaten? And she thinks, shit. And she says no. Even though it's 1 p.m. She's not eaten at all? Like, she moved yesterday. She had pizza last night because, you know, you're tired after a big move, but surely you'd wake up still hungry. But no, she hasn't eaten all day. And he says, are you hungry? And she says, not for food, which she makes that fucking joke every single time. Every single time he asks if she's hungry, she thinks or says, not for food. And it's never funny. It's never insightful. And it's never appreciated. And then he's like, you're eager as ever, so am I, but Dr. Green will be here shortly. And she's like, holy cow, the doctor, I'd forgotten. And he says that she's the best OBGYN in Seattle. And she thinks, holy Moses, if she's the best OBGYN, he scheduled her to see me on a Sunday at lunchtime. God, it must have cost a fortune. Like, who cares? He's a billionaire. It costs what it costs. And he says, Anastasia, my mother would like you to come to dinner this evening. I believe Elliot is asking Kate too. I don't know how you feel about that. It might be odd for me to introduce you to my family. And she's thinking, odd? Why? Are you ashamed of me? And he's like, no, it's just odd because I've never done it before. And she calls him out because he must have just rolled his eyes. And she's like, why are you allowed to roll your eyes and I'm not? And he's like, oh, I didn't know I was. And she's like, well, neither do I usually. So she snapped at him and Christian's speechless, but then Taylor appears and he's like, Dr. Green's here. And he says, show her up to Miss Steele's room. And she thinks, Miss Steele's room! ! Like that's big news. Like when you toured the place last week, he literally said, this will be your room. this is where you're staying. Decorate it how you want. Now she's like, whoa, I get a room. Like, pay attention, Anna. And he says, ready for some contraception? And she's like, oh, you're not coming with? And she's shocked at that. And he's like, haha, no, I don't think the doctor would approve of that. And then they have a quick kiss and he says, I'm so glad you're here. I can't wait to get you naked. And that's the end of the chapter. So I would have thought we would have ended with Dr. Green and her having a nice chat about condoms. Also, super awkward. She doesn't really know why she wants to talk to the doctor, right? He's just said, I don't like condoms. Go see a doctor. So now the doctor's going to be like, why do you want to explore other forms of contraception? And she's just going to be like, oh, because my boyfriend doesn't like condoms. And I feel like Dr. Green's going to be like, yeah, but what do you want? And she's not going to know what to say. So that's going to be interesting. And apart from that, what a filler chapter. That was filler, but she finally fucking moved. Oh, she finally moved to Seattle. I finally have a good, solid understanding of where she is in America. So I'm happy with that. Now I just needed to sign that fucking contract so she can stop being like, rules schmools, I haven't signed yet. She just needs to sign it. And then hopefully that's the end of the book, because far out. And then I guess she's going to play baseball in a thunderstorm and then run into some outlaw vampires, because that's the only way to make this plot spicier. I don't know what else she's going to do. If you had any burning thoughts about this chapter, send me an email to breakingdownpod@gmail.com. Send me a tweet to @podbreakingdown or NathanBrown90. You can check us out on Instagram at breakingdownbadbooks or check out breakingdownbadbooks.com. If you haven't already, please leave a rating or a review. And I'll see you next time. Bye! This episode of Breaking Down Bad Books is brought to you by Chef Good. Chef Good offers healthy meals freshly made by chefs and nutritionists delivered to your door. I've just gotten a box of vegetarian meals for the week ahead, and I love that they have new recipes and choices weekly, and I'm not stuck with the same options every time. Chef Good is offering $15 off new orders for Breaking Down Bad Books listeners. Just go to breakingdownbadbooks.com/promotions to access the link and offer code. If you're not going to read good books, you may as well eat good food.